So yeah, let's start with ayahuasca a little bit. I mean, how did you even like find out about it?
I think about 20 years ago, it was something in the underground. People were talking, and I know people on the scenes. And this is something you really have to try. And I was intrigued, and I was in Brazil, and just made a few phone calls, kind of discreetly, because I didn't know, if it was criminal or what. But I made some discreet calls, and I met somebody on the street in Copacabana, and Trudy and I, my wife, we got in the back of his car, and we mysteriously led out of Rio through the favelas into the jungle. And the road was getting narrower and narrower, and there was all these dogs on the road that wouldn't move out the ways. And then it was basically a jungle path, and we came to a big kind of car park, a lot of cars. There was a big church. It looked like a church. Anyway, there was a couple of hundred people in there wearing blue coats and green coats and kind of a uniform with stars on them. I thought, oh, this is some kind of cult. And I have sort of was immunized against religion as a child. I was brought up Catholic, and I'm not sure I want to enter a church to have this experience. But nonetheless, we were there, and we sat down in chairs, and they welcomed us, and we handed out this brew, and it's about this much brown liquid. And smelled like something you'd get out of a sump outlet, like disgusting. And Judy and I looked at each other and said, everybody's drinking it, so we did. I drank it in one. It tasted awful. They handed out some lemon or something to kill the taste, and then we just sat and waited, not really knowing what to expect. And then, after about 40 minutes, my lips started to tingle, and I started to drift off, and then I went into some serious terror, I suppose, not being able to navigate exactly who I was or where I was or what I was. Because when my eyes were shut, I was in this holographic, spinning, geometrical, alien world. Open my eyes, and everybody else is kind of sleeping or in some kind of trance, and I go back. And then I start to feel like vomiting. My whole body is very uncomfortable. I don't vomit. I managed to hold it down, but there's something coursing through every cell in my body, like an intelligence searching everything. And I'm tingling and tingling, and I'm thinking, this is probably the heaviest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Close to a near-death experience. And these geometric shapes keep transforming in incredible colors, and I'm in this extraordinary world, a little bit like that scene in Kubrick's 2001, wherever he's going. And then I start to have visions of my life, who I am, me as a baby, me at my conception, believe it or not. This flash of light. And then my parents, my grandparents, I start having what feel like race memories, of visions of ships and war. A lot of terrible misery and pain and battlefields. And I end up in some kind of story where I'm the observer, and I'm watching a man like me, but not me, going through a drama in a war situation where he's being court-martialed for telling his troops not to leave the trench. And then he's shot by the very people he's actually saved. And at this point, I just start crying like a baby. I'm just weeping uncontrollably. And I sort of kind of wake up, and I look around, and everybody else is in their own space. So I go back to this world, and then that pain and those tears, they sort of bleed into my relationships with women, the women I've known, my mother, and this whole. I'm basically reassessing my entire life. It's like my life passes before me, as they say, happens when you die. So I'm having this death experience. And then this goes on for a good hour. And then I start to sort of navigate and feel kind of comfortable and kind of supported by this experience. Like, it feels like love. I feel deeply protected and whole and utterly connected with myself, with the room. And if I look out of the window into the jungle, connected visually now with every leaf on the tree by a line of energy and the stars. And I am wired to the entire cosmos. I look at the ground and I see a crack in the ground, and then inside that crack there's a little flower growing, and that's my brother. Everything, stone, inanimate chairs, pieces of plastic, I'm completely and utterly connected to. And I realize for the first time this is the only genuine religious experience I've ever had. I paid lip service to religious experience as a child, going to Catholic school and church and thinking, okay, maybe something will happen if I pray long enough, but nothing ever did. This is genuinely ontological, I think is the word. It's absolutely astounding. I'm amazed by what's happening in my mind, and it's given me this place in my mind where I realize that we are actually eternal, and there's no end to this mind. And I realize everyone else in the room is going through the same thing. While I was going through the terror part, the painful part, the violence and everything, I looked across at Trudy, who was having a beatific, or seems to be having a beatific vision. It looks like she's in heaven. But meeting the celebrants in this communion afterwards, and hearing them talk and feeling part of this brotherhood, it made me realize that it is communion, this direct access to the Godhead, whatever you think that is. I have no idea what it is, but there's definitely an intelligence, a higher intelligence and an ethical intelligence at work in you during this experience. And it's stronger than you, it's cleverer than you are, and it's part of you. You are part of it. And so I've been taking it as regularly as I possibly can over the last couple of decades.
But these substances are, as we know, still, although it's becoming more and more complex, illegal in the West. Why do you think that is? I mean, why do you think that there's such a lack of understanding of these types of experiences?
I don't think authority, whether it's government or the established church, really wants you to have direct access to this connection, because their power base lies in keeping you in the dark, or keeping you disconnected or alienated from that kind of experience. And so, whether it's conscious or unconscious, their instinct is to prevent this from happening. They want to control everything. I wish it wasn't the case. I know that in the United States, surprisingly, this experience has become legal within the parameters of an organized church.
The one that actually you worked with,
yeah,
the
United Vegetal.
The UDV is kind of a mestizo tradition, right? It's like where the sort of white and the Indian and the black culture kind of meet each other. You also have had the opportunity to drink ayahuasca with more of like the indigenous people. How was those experiences? How were they different? What did you gain from them?
I actually preferred drinking it with the shamanic tradition more than the syncretic kind of religious thing. It was very kind of Catholic based, and I was reserved about it because of my own history. But drinking it in the jungle with Shwara, I think was the name of the tribe. They'd heard about me, kind of, and it was a small group. It was about 10 of us, and the first thing they said was, "Which one's Sting?" They knew something called Sting was some kind of big honcho. I sort of raised my hand quite anxiously and said, oh, okay, we got special brew for you. Massive cup of this thick, viscous stuff, and everybody else is getting small cups of much more mellow-looking stuff, and I said, oh, okay. So I knew what was in store. I took it, went to my hammock and tied the seatbelt on. I was destroyed. I just simply didn't exist. I basically crawled to the shaman and said, please put me back together again. He said, no, you're doing really good. And then they beat me with leaves and blew tobacco smoke on me and literally put me back together again with this incredible care and love and attention. I think ayahuasca gives you what you need. And sometimes, I think I need my ass kicked a lot of the time. You know, I'm in a profession where your ego is constantly massaged and it's built up. So for someone like me, the ayahuasca experience is essential. I need to be beaten down occasionally. But I'm always confident that no matter how troubling the experience is, and it's full of dread, that I will get this feeling I described before of incredible love for myself, for everyone around me, for the world generally, for nature. And that is a true religion in the real sense, reconnecting, with who we are and actually what we are. We are not separate from nature. So I think it's a true religion. It's a genuine religious experience for me, not lip service. It's the real thing.
And what do you think it sort of tells us or indicates about kind of like the nature of our consciousness and maybe the nature of plant consciousness or plant sentience?
Well, it feels that way. It feels as if you are somehow interfacing with a different kind of intelligence, a longer-term intelligence, a quieter, more watchful intelligence, like a tree. I have lots of trees on my property in England, 400- or 500-year-old trees. I look at them now differently. I realize that they, in fact, are the guardians of this particular space. I'm just a tenant for a while. I have to look after them, but they somehow look after me, and that sounds kind of woolly, but I'm a tree hugger. I'm a self-confessed card-carrying tree hugger. But once you get into that longevity of intelligence, how you exist for all of those years, using all of that energy, giving out all of that energy, is something very valuable to the human spirit. We are connected to trees. We can't live without trees. I've always had this intuition anyway that we should save forests. That primal forest ought to be protected for many, many reasons, climate reasons, but spiritual reasons too. We need these. The ancients used to call them dryads, these tree spirits. I think they exist. If you're in the right space, right state of mind.
Now, had you already started the Rainforest Foundation when you had that ayahuasca experience, or was that one of the?
It was kind of happened at more or less the same time. I always had this instinct about nature that it should be protected, and I went to the rainforest before I'd had the ayahuasca experience, but it was kind of at the same time, and I suppose has informed our work since then.
What have you been learning about the rainforest these days? Well, your foundation works in a whole bunch of different countries, right?
I think we're in 17 countries now.
I mean, it seems like there's a lot of efforts to preserve, what's left of the rainforest, but on the other hand, it doesn't really seem like, it's going in the right direction at this point.
No. We've had a lot of successes, and we're very proud of them. But the war goes on. How do you convince people who are dirt poor not to chop their forest down when they've been offered lots of money to do it by corporations and the like? It's very difficult. But as I say, we've had enough successes to carry on and just to see that it does work, and people's lives have been protected through this legal work.
And Trudy's been working on a film about the oil companies down there.
She's been in Ecuador for the past year, dealing with the aftermath of a big American oil company's work there, leaving more toxic waste than Exxon Valdez left and cancer is rife. People have no fresh water. The fish are dead. They can't grow food. There is oil everywhere. Babies are given, because there's no other choice, water that's polluted with oil, and the cancer levels are out of. This is a big legal case at the moment. They made.
I mean, probably still in the U.S., most people, or maybe even in Europe, most people really don't have much idea what happens to these environments when the oil companies come in to supply this.
They're basically destroyed for what is probably worth a couple of weeks motoring in the world.
Right.
And then you lose something that is priceless and has been there for millions of years and will never be replaced, all for the sake of driving a car. You know, I drive a car, I drive in planes, I'm as guilty as everybody. I'm more aware now of where that comes from, and the actual price of it is, we need to stop.
So I've written this book, as you know, about 2012 as some kind of like transformation point, potentially. I mean, what do you think about that as a concept? I mean, do you feel that we're moving towards some kind of make or break changeover point? You know?
Well, here we are in 2008, and the economy looks like it has no bottom. There's no bottom to it. But on the other side, I don't think there's any ceiling to it either. I think the potential in this time is enormous. And as you say, it's a time for transformation, and as you say in your book, apocalypse means uncovering. It doesn't mean necessarily disaster. It means uncovering of reality. So we're facing reality, and I don't think there's a better time to be alive. I think it's incredibly exciting. I think most of the souls are on the planet right now because everybody wants to have a front seat in this apocalypse, this thing that's going to happen. But you know, it's a gradual uncovering of reality, and I think we can only really welcome that and be optimistic about it. With some reservations. We don't want to destroy ourselves, but we can see it as an opportunity to change and change the way we live and the way we interface with the planet. You know, which goes back to my ayahuasca experience. Really, being connected to it and living a genuinely connected life. And it's not easy in the modern world. You know, we all pollute the planet.
I mean, you come into contact with like so many communities from all like the traveling and touring and all this stuff. I mean, like the Hollywood community and the rock and roll community. Do you feel that there is some kind of development or evolution of like awareness, consciousness, like more sustainable behavior patterns?
I think more and more people in my industry are part of that movement. And I think we've gotten over the idea that if you say you're for a cause, you're just some sort of self-serving, fantasist. That it's all about your ego, or it's all about being more famous, or whatever. I think we're over that. Everyone realizes that we are in crisis, and everyone has a part to play, even celebrities. So the work I do tends to be less visible. I prefer, we raise funds, but I stay away from the front line. I stay away from the cameras, because it's not helpful sometimes. As a celebrity, you can actually bring a lot of attention to a subject, and you can point at the moon, but people will be looking at your finger. As a celebrity finger pointing at the obvious, So I raise funds. I leave the very complex work at the front line to experts. We're an NGO with some very, very able professional help, so that they don't need a celebrity on the front line. So to such an extent, I've been doing yoga now for well over 20 years, and I think it's given me another lease of feeling like a young, virile man. I'm 57. I feel like I'm 20. Mm-hmm. I have the energy of a 20-year-old, and that same kind of lust for life that I had then. I think largely through yoga, through being open to experiences, rather than closing off and saying, I'm now finished. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I consider myself, always have done, a student or a work in progress. Learning stuff interests me, and I think it's that mental thing of being willing to be out of your comfort zone a lot of the time to learn. I'm doing an opera at the moment in Paris. Not because I have any hubristic sense that I'm, now an opera singer at all. It's just I've been given the opportunity to learn something, performing on stage in costume, acting, not bumping into the furniture, and singing at the same time, to learn. And it's just taking yourself out of the comfort zone. It's like ayahuasca. You put yourself in the position of the pupil, and the master will come and bring you for a while, and then something new will appear, something will transform. I believe in that, and I think that's the secret to life.
How much yoga do you do these days?
Well, I do yoga and Pilates as
An hour or two a
cross
day,
training.
something
I do 2 hours a day, and I'm pretty fit.
Yeah. Sure
But I couldn't do my job if I wasn't. What?
I'm sure you could beat me up in a minute.
I wouldn't do that. No, I'm very peaceful.
So, but did the yoga have like, have you ever had like mystical experiences, anything along the lines of the kind of ayahuasca experience through yoga? Or is it more just like a calming, meditative? I mean, what kind of benefits do people get from a dedicated yoga practice?
You know, I've done Ashtanga yoga for many years, and it's a pretty militant form of yoga. And the meditation at the end of an Ashtanga session comes from exhaustion. It's the discipline of exhaustion. You're completely wrecked. And then you just sit quietly, and you do enter an alpha state. It's not as, for me, it's not as profound as the ayahuasca experience. Nonetheless, I can see how, by extension, you just keep doing that, and you can get to the same place, the same way you can do by fasting or meditation or whatever. But we're all going to the same area of the brain where we access this idea of the eternal, and that's really the goal, to realize that there's a continuum from the beginning to the end. And in fact, is there an end, or is there a beginning? It just keeps going, and that part of the brain is in all of us. And it's all of the issues that face us. It's pollution or climate change. They're all interrelated. You can't separate anyone from any other. And consciousness is the main one. We're in this oil consciousness. It's a pretty low-level consciousness. We dig the oil, we destroy the environment, we drive our cars and drive planes. That's pretty low level. We need to get to a higher level of consciousness. I think energy is something that can be. I think that the universe is full of energy. It's an energy machine, and we're just relating to this tiny way of, rather inefficient way of getting energy when it's in the air around us. There must be a technology that we can invent, but we have to get to a higher consciousness first to perceive it, and I think we have to do that quickly. As a species, we evolved through crisis. I don't think we would have left the sea if it hadn't been some sort of crisis in the sea. There wasn't enough oxygen in the sea, so we moved out. I think the crisis is there to trip us into the next, literally trip us into the next level of our existence as a species. We may not recognize what that looks like, and I'm not sure how quickly it can happen, but that's how we progress. We put ourselves out of the comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Maybe we do it unconsciously.
One thing that's good about yoga, I always think that it's about getting comfortable in uncomfortable spots.
Yeah.
So it almost becomes, you can have like a yoga of transformation.
Yeah. I think, how can I stay in this position longer than 3 seconds? And you end up there for an hour, and you realize that it's actually the most comfortable place you could ever be. But it's just that initial resistance to change, any change. We don't like it, but it's essential.